2 years ago, I bit the dust. Laying on an operating table, my soul left my body. It was February 2018. I was just 27. I was taking the drive to work and boom, out of nowhere, I got hit by some redneck in a pickup truck who ran a stop sign. He was drunk. The steering column narrowly missed my head, which would have killed me instantly. But instead, I ended up upside down with shrapnel from the dashboard of my 1995 Honda Civic between my 7th and 8th vertebrae. I was wheeled to Mass General, where a team of surgeons tried to save my life. That's where I died. It's a crazy thing. Looking down at your corpse and hearing the flatline as nurses and doctors struggle to bring you back. I wasn't scared though. It wasn't fear that I was feeling. It was confusion. You know, like that's me, but I'm me. That's when everything stopped. It froze. Everything. The doctors and the nurses, the people in the hallway, the long beep from the heart rate monitor. Everything suddenly froze, and at that moment, I saw him. An elderly man in an Irish flat cap, button-up shirts and khakis. He was the only thing still moving. He entered the operating room and looked at me. He looked at me with a kind of understanding. I was still so confused. He smiled slightly and opened his mouth to speak, but stopped to think for a moment. I fidgeted around, waiting for him to say something. The silence was so thick, and terror was finally beginning to set in on me. I blurted out, "Who are you?" His slight smile left his face. He seemed saddened by my question. "You know me by a few names," the man said in this deep, gravelly voice with a standard non-Southern American accent. "I'm Death, or the Grim Reaper, or Anku, Smiat, Mayman, Heel, or whatever else you'd like to call me." I laughed. It was hysterical to me. This old man couldn't be the personification of death. I laughed for a bit before looking back at the man and seeing he was entirely serious. If I could have seen my face, I know it would have been devoid of all color. I couldn't handle that fact yet, so I said plainly, "No way, no way." I walked out of the operating room and down the hallway of the hospital. As I exited, it was clear that this whole frozen in time stuff was hospital-wide. I tried to shake a few of the people in an attempt to wake them up, but it was of no use. Walking slowly behind me, whistling Danny Boy, was the old man. I turned around to face him. And you know what he said to me? He says, "Ready to face your own mortality?" I was about to punch that guy in the face when the thought finally ran past my head. Could I really be dead? No. I'm only 27. I have so much ahead of me. I just got a promotion. Catherine, my girlfriend, is moving into my apartment. I guess I was thinking for too long because the old man said, "Listen, kid, I have a lot of people to visit. These encounters aren't really supposed to take more than 20 minutes. You've taken up town already, and I haven't even begun the explanation yet. So, if you could stop asking a million questions in your own head, and let me tell you what's going on, we can get this over with." I listened to each word that he said, and although I was terrified and confused, I sat down at the bench in the hallway next to a frozen man, and I prepared to listen. The slight smirk returned to the old man's face. "Good. So you're dead. Drunk driver crashed into you. Depending on what kind of person you were in life, you'll either go to hell, Samawat, Nirvana, whatever you wish to call it, or hell. Hell is a pretty universal word. Both these places are ruled by omnipresent beings." He pulled out a small pad of paper from the pocket of his pants. By the looks of it, you'll be going. He looked back at the paper confused. Huh. Haven't had one of you in a while. I was still processing everything of what had just been said to me, but I still said, "One of what?" My voice was shaky, scared. He replied, seemingly annoyed. "An undecided soul. You weren't good or bad in life. You were an even mix of both. See, some people get close to a perfect balance but almost always tip one way. Your type are very uncommon." This confused me even more. I always thought that I was a good person, but maybe some of my actions were questionable. "Perk up, kid. This means you might not spend eternity in hell." He smiled at me. I looked back at him, my mouth agape, tears in my eyes, and attempting to stutter out a sentence. What does it mean?" Death laughed in my face. "Oh boy, even I can't answer for that. Officially, I'm supposed to tell you that this is an anomaly. This didn't exactly calm my nerves." "What happens next?" I asked less shakily, finally adjusting to things in my brain. "All it is, what with you? You can use other words to start sentences, you know. As for your question, I have no clue. I imagine that you'll be brought down to hell and then to heaven. That's what they did with the last guy." He shrugged and began to walk away. "Wait, Death!" He turned around and smugly stated, "Death usually waits for no man. But what is it? You got a minute left." Scared and confused with no one to comfort me, I simply asked, "What if I need help?" He chuckled. "Just ask." And with that, Death was gone. I sat there for a while. I don't remember exactly how long I sat there, but eventually, even though I was dead, I fell asleep. As I awoke, I was no longer in the hospital. I was sitting on a park bench. When I woke up, I figured that it was a dream. That some hobo had injected me with something, and that it was all a bad trip. But I was wrong. I was sitting in Central Park, and as I looked around me, everything was still frozen. Just minutes ago, I was in Boston, and now all of a sudden, I'm in New York. I'm glad that no entity spoke to me at that moment. Honestly, it would have terrified me even more. Thanks to the time given to me on that park bench, maybe 2 hours, I was able to process things. I cried. I feel comfortable saying that because we would all do the same. Who wouldn't sob if they had just found out that they were dead? I'm thankful for the time that I was given. I then met him. The being people have feared since the dawn of man. Satan. I could see him from across the park. The images used by the Catholic Church are not so accurate. I was expecting an 11-foot tall goat man, but instead, I was looking at a biker. He almost looked like the Undertaker from WWE during his leather and motorcycles phase. Death had told me that I was going to hell first, but I didn't know that I would be meeting the man himself. He walked in a perfectly straight line, even walking through the fountain in front of me, yet there was no splash and no water stuck to his boots or jeans. He sat down next to me, expressionless. I turned to look at him. His beard was unkempt, but his hair was cut short, and there was a bandana tied around his head. I decided to speak first. Are you God? Or... He cut me off. The devil, Mr. Scratch. Yeah, that's me. His voice wasn't like Death's. It was inhumanly deep and as raspy as an 1800s mine worker. He carried his words, dragging them out longer than necessary. But for whatever reason, his speaking gave me a strange comfort and confidence. My fear melted away. I think it was his doing. He wanted me to feel calm while speaking to him. Still, I can't explain it. I can't explain any of this. With this newfound artificial confidence, I no longer feared speaking to him. Is this hell? Why would you pick Central Park? He laughed at my question. No, this is closer to a waiting room. The king. He pointed to the sky. And I have an agreement for undecided souls. I cannot show you hell. He cannot show you heaven. You must make your own decision. This seemed like idiotic terms for the devil to agree to. I'm allowed to choose. Of course I would pick heaven every time. A paradise. After a few seconds taking this in, I retorted. Are you not evil? I went to church as a kid. You're the embodiment of true evil. He nodded. Yes, that is correct. However, you fail to see without evil, there isn't good. I force the world to be better, indirectly. The king takes a more straightforward approach. I force the world to adapt by making hard times. He sends a Mother Teresa to fix everything. But in the end, it yields the same result. A better world. I am evil. I enjoy chaos. But I still like humans. I still like Earth. So, the question for you is, do you want to be the straightforward easy fix? Or do you want to add to the hard times the Earth is facing to make them adapt? That decision is only yours. But I was dead. How could I add or take away from evil or good in the living world? I had so many questions, none of which I asked. We sat there for a bit. I had never looked at things the way that he had described. We talked some more. He told me things that I can't share here. Things about me and my family that I really just don't feel comfortable sharing. By the time that we were done, I had a new respect for him. I had always looked at him as just evil, but that conversation showed me that there was far more to the one they call Satan. Old Scratch stood up. This was interesting. I haven't really spoke to someone in a long time. Do me a favor. I looked up at him. Don't let the king give you a sermon. Listen to what he has to say, but don't be influenced by holy speech. His commandments can't save you anymore. And with that final message, he was gone. My talk with the Dark Lord of the Underworld was brief, but it held such impact. I will never forget my conversation with the devil. I was expecting him to tempt me, like Jesus in the desert. He isn't what you think, truly. Unlike after my conversation with death, I wasn't given time. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, I was sitting in an entirely white room. The park bench that I was sitting on was replaced with a white couch, and in front of me was a wooden table with 2 scotch glasses and a crystal bottle of the hard stuff. There was an empty chair across from me. Behind the chair there was a door, still entirely white. It was like a fancy bathroom. The doorknob rattled and in stepped my father. A tall man with a clean-shaven face and a neat crew cut. I stood up, shocked. My father had passed away 10 years prior. Tears began to stream down my face. Dad? He shook his head. This is going to be hard to explain. I don't know what form I'm appearing to you in, so I apologize if it isn't what you were expecting. I am your creator. So, subconsciously, you see me as your physical creator. It's quite common actually, so there's no need to fear. He spoke in exactly my father's voice. You probably have a lot of questions, so I'll get things out of the way. I am God. I am Allah. I am Yahweh. I am Ra, God of the Sun. I am Odin, the All-Father. I am Zeus and I am Shiva. I am the universe. In many different countries at many different times, I have been interpreted differently. None are incorrect in the belief of what I am. I am all. I am absolute. You spoke to it, I'm assuming. I hope you took everything you said with a grain of salt. We've been in a 6 million year long game of chess. He isn't to be trusted. I knew that he was speaking about Satan, but still, I didn't talk. I was enamored by the fact that I was speaking to God, who looked and sounded exactly like my father, a man that I had buried 10 years before that moment. He sat in the chair for the first time and poured himself a drink. Usually, when there's a split-souled person, they're leaning one way by the time they get to me. But you are no closer to finding what you are at heart. May I ask why? I swallowed hard, feeling a lump get pushed down my throat. This has been a rough day, I suppose. He nodded, understandingly. I can imagine. Being dead is extra tough for the first 30 seconds, especially when you're split-souled. I looked at him confused. 30? I'm sorry, 30 seconds? I've been here for almost 4 hours now. He seemed like he expected me to say that. Time is odd in purgatory, which is where you were. It moves and behaves strangely. Do you have any questions for me? I nodded yes. Is the Bible true? I had been debating myself with that very question for years, and finally, I could ask him that question. Every word of it. Same with the Quran and every holy text or mythology. It was true because they believed it. It existed because they believed it did, just not in exactly the way they thought. I shook my head no and laughed slightly. That doesn't make any sense. I now see the irony in using the Lord's name in vain. It wouldn't. Alright kid, decision time. I'll leave you here to think, just walk through that door when you're ready. He left through the door that he told me to walk through. I sat there alone. Would I fix the world with hard times or with good deeds? What kind of person am I? With that thought, I remember back to what Death had told me. If I need help, just ask. To an empty room, I said, I need help. I have no clue. I don't want to rot in hell, but I don't know what happens to me in heaven. I'm scared. For the 4th time that day, I broke down in tears, when suddenly I felt a hand on my shoulder. I looked up and I saw the face of the same old man who had greeted me in the hospital, still wearing the Irish flat cap, button-down shirt and khakis. Death had answered my call. Alright, trouble aside, eh? Well, I have a few words for you. For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not. Those are Frank Sinatra lyrics. I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you to go with your gut. You won't regret it if you just make the decision. Good luck. My job is the same thing over and over, but you're different. Today was interesting. I'm rooting for you. He opened the door for me, and I looked at the black void in front of me. I stepped into it and I found myself surrounded by darkness. It was so cold and so lonely, but then there was light. I opened my eyes and I was lying on a hospital bed. I looked out the window and I saw people walking down on the sidewalk below. A nurse entered my room and explained what had happened. That I had died in surgery, but they managed to revive me. That I had been in a medically induced coma for 2 days. She explained that I could regain most motor function with physical therapy. She called it a miracle. I went through a lot of therapy, and my therapist, she says that it was a dream during my coma. I don't think so. I made my decision, and my decision was uncertainty. I imagine the next time that I die, it'll be my last. I just hope that I make enough decisions in life to tip the scale one way. To this day, I know they're up there, playing chess, never winning, never losing. It will never end. I don't fear death anymore. He's an old friend.